Today, I chat to Sam Penny from Ocean Heroes, an Australian charity using surfing and ocean connection to enrich the lives of neurodivergent children and their families. You will hear how surfing transformed his own personal journey and how he now shares this passion for the ocean to enrich the lives of others, bringing joy, purpose, and presence. Thank you so much for listening to One Breath Conversations Below the Surface, a podcast exploring how the ocean transforms lives and shapes identity. This podcast was born from my own journey as a surfer, freediver, photographer, and mother. I have experienced the undeniable pull of the ocean and wanted to create a space for conversations with other water people to explore how the ocean has shaped their journeys too. My hope is that we can inspire you all to reconnect with our natural world, explore our blue backyard, and make bold choices in your own lives. Hello, and today's guest is Sam from Ocean Heroes. He's the East Coast Operations Manager. Hi, Sam. I would love for you to tell us what Ocean Heroes is about, what your role is, and how you got involved.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Katie. Thanks for having me on the show as well. Happy to be here. So I am recently hired by Ocean Heroes, but have been a volunteer for some time with them. And a mission is to enrich the lives of neurodivergent kids and their families through the ocean, specifically through surfing. And so we've been running as a charity organization, started in Western Australia by three friends since 2016. So they all kind of grouped together. One was in ocean research, one ran a surf school, and the other was a personal trainer. And it was Luke that was the PT, and he was working with neurodivergent kids at the time, and realized that they had a lot of capacity for these sort of physical activities, but needed to do so in their own way and to be instructed as such. And they kind of put their heads together and tried to figure out how they could get them out in the community and sort of involved in Australia's greatest resource, which is, I think, the ocean that surrounds our entire island. And yeah, they sort of put their heads together, got a bunch of mates together on a chilly August day and took 25 kids surfing. And it kind of exploded from there. The community really rallied around it. They were so impressed with what they'd done, and there was nothing sort of like it yet. And then back in 2017, Sam Moyle, who's one of the founders, he brought it over to the East Coast, set it up out of Bondi. So a lot of our sort of community and our volunteering base are out of Bondi. And we've since been sort of expanding up and down the East Coast as much as possible, given, the resources that we have and that we're able to obtain through fundraising, government grants, and sort of our fundraising events. And now, we sort of rolled out corporate events too. So we're taking corporate volunteers out into these events that we run and sort of showing them a little bit more about what we do. And through that, sort of bit by bit, we're expanding into new communities and more regional communities as well, which have less access to this type of connected community, social type of sports events for these neurodivergent kids, which has been a little bit of a barrier, I think, for a lot of them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I've obviously got a personal connection to what you do because my family joined you on an event in Manly in Sydney. And I actually didn't know about your organisation. I think it popped up on my social media. And being the parent of neurodivergent children and also a surfer, I signed them up. And I can really vouch for the enthusiasm and the care and the knowledge of all of the people involved. We had an incredible experience, and I think that's one of the reasons why I invited you to come and talk on the podcast, because the podcast is about the transformative power of the ocean and how it connects people from all walks of life, and how the ocean can be used as a tool to improve people's lives. And I think so many people who don't already have that ocean connection don't know that. And I think being a carer and parent of neurodivergent children, and also understanding that I also have a neurodivergent brain, I can see how powerful the ocean can be in regulating and connecting. And as you say, sometimes it's difficult for families to access that because of safety, because of geographic location, because of lack of knowledge or lack of skills. Perhaps the parents don't swim or have that connection. So I really believe in what you do. And on the day that we attended, we saw that transformation in one of my children who was unable to participate initially and was very dysregulated, and then got into the water and just ended up standing up on her first waves with so much support and cheering, and to see that joy and pride and the flow-on effects for their self-esteem and sort of understanding that they can do hard things in the future. I just think it's super powerful. Love, like, how did you personally get involved with the organization?
That's a great question. So it was at the beginning of 2024. I was studying at the time and had, through my partner at the time, actually gotten involved in the neurodivergent world. So whilst I was studying, I was doing casual support work for initially just one. And then by the end of my studies, I sort of had a handful of kids, all guys actually, that I worked with between the ages of sort of 12 and 22, and all neurodivergent, living around the Northern Beaches. And I had seen actually something similar to Ocean Heroes pop up years before, and had tried several times to get involved in volunteering for them, but they sort of dropped off events wise around here, and it never sort of came to fruition. But then I stumbled across, I think it was the same. I think it was a Instagram post. We're pretty active on social media, as you've got to be these days. And I think it was an Instagram post of an event that had run, and I was like, this looks really fun and exactly like what I'm after, and something probably my clients could have benefited from too. And so I signed up and popped down just for the day as water support. And I fell in love from the second I arrived there. I absolutely fell in love. I was handed a clipboard with name tags, and I had to go out and hand everyone name tags. So it was a good way to meet everyone. It just felt super inclusive, from the second I arrived to the end of the day. And I just left buzzing, just grinning from ear to ear, having taken a bunch of kids surfing and seeing, like you said, those similar transformations to what Abby experienced when she came down. And that was really powerful. And I pulled Sam aside. So Sam is, as I mentioned, the founder. We've actually just recently brought a CEO on board, also called Sam. So there's a lot of there's a lot of email confusion and phone confusion in the organization. But I pulled him aside, and I said, look, if there's ever any jobs going at Ocean Heroes, any full time or casual part time, whatever, I'd love to be involved. And there wasn't at the time, but he said, down the track maybe. And yeah, I then sort of volunteered at a bunch of events with them. They also got me and other volunteers kind of skilled up. We ran like a water safety day, similar to like the Bronze Medallion, down at Shelley Beach on this like miserable, grim, rainy winter day. But we just made the most of it and had a lot of fun together. And it's that kind of volunteering community really, really kind of sucked me in and got me keen to get involved. Yeah, it kind of worked out a funny timing. I'd only just started my new job recently when Ocean Heroes reached out to me again and said, hey, is there still interest in working full time with us? And I kind of jumped at the opportunity. I had a meeting with Lockie and had a few sort of back and forth, and now just came on board about a month ago, actually, was my start date with Ocean Heroes. And we kind of run things on the East Coast, as you've mentioned. Yeah.
Well,
And I'm loving every minute.
Congratulations. When you like you said you were doing study and you had another job lined up, or perhaps started another job, was that sort of in a different industry or different sort of sphere to what you're doing now? Because you obviously just said you're working in support work previously.
Yeah, completely different actually. My career's been pretty curly. If we go, I mean, we probably don't need to go all the way back, but I graduated at the beginning of this year with a Bachelor of Paramedicine. And then I went to work for New South Wales Ambulance up until a month ago. And yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting experience. I think a lot of things didn't really align with, how my brain works and the things I kind of seek out. And I kind of, there was not a whole heap of joy in that job. I think it was, you did the best you could with what you had and tried to make patient experiences as good as possible. And then, if I compare that to Ocean Heroes, where it's kind of, you bring your everything, and the joy that you see is just magical. And it was, an opportunity I couldn't pass up, honestly. So yeah, I kind of jumped ship and came on board.
Like it's divine intervention. One of the questions that I've been asking my guests is sort of individually how the ocean has shaped their identity. And I'm hearing a lot of similar stories in that my guests have made choices or started pursuing a line of study or started pursuing a certain lifestyle. And then this connection to the ocean has somehow pulled them away from that or presented opportunities which has pulled them away from that. And then it's addictive. It's addictive. And I think, listening to your story about how the founders, have come from these diverse walks of life, but then still had that connection to the ocean, and then formed um, their skills into this incredible organization, which then passes on those skills and knowledge sort of collectively, and to spark joy. I mean, that's what it's all about. I feel so, you and I have obviously had chats already. I just feel so passionate about it. And that's what I want to really explore with this podcast, because it's just so incredible how people are building communities around the connection to the ocean, on the idea of bringing community together and spreading the joy. Your organization does run on volunteers and then also corporate sponsorship, and I understand like sponsorship events that the public can participate in. Can
Mhm.
you sort of tell me more about that? Sort of those, I guess, those different groups and how they can get involved.
Yeah, sure. So I guess there's a few different streams that we kind of pull together, as you'd mentioned, and at the end of the day, the bread and butter of what it enables us to do is to keep what we do, these events that we run for the neurodivergent community, keep them 100% free, and they will always be 100% free. And so we obviously need funding to be able to do that, because it costs money to put on events, even though we
Mm.
do rely heavily on a volunteer base. And so we rely on things like government grants, donations from individuals or corporates, as well as events that we run. And so we've got actually our first big proper fundraising event on the East Coast that we're doing. And it's kind of a mimic of what they already run in the West Coast, but it's a 24-hour swim. And so on the 15th and 16th of November, we have, I think, 9 or 10 teams now that are
Yeah, wow.
entering the pool, and they're teams of 12 individual swimmers. And each of these teams are sort of fundraising in their own way, supported by us as best we can. But we plan on swimming for 24 hours, getting as many laps, as many Ks as possible, tagging our teammates in, sleeping and eating and everything in between, with a DJ there, and
Fun.
food and everything down in Maroubra at the leisure centre there. And so that's sort of our first big fundraising event. We also run movie nights, but that's a little bit fundraising, a little bit sort of volunteer community building, just sort of getting people involved outside of our free events to, show appreciation and enjoy some time together in the evening. But yeah, so the big one is the swim coming up. And then we've also got, as you'd mentioned before, and this was something, Katie, that you, Abby, and Bo were a part of, was one of our corporate events. And so that is another arm, again, that we're exploring for the first time. You came down to the first one on the East
Oh,
Coast. Yeah, so it was a really cool way to open
that's
the account
exciting.
and see, how impactful that was for you and your kids, and hopefully first of many for you guys. But so we now welcome corporate sponsors who will, sort of provide a donation to us to bring down a bunch of their workers or their employees during the week. And we kind of upskill them, we coach them, and enable them to work with these kids in the water. And then the kids will come down and we take them out and we take them surfing. And it was just a phenomenal success that we saw, not only on your side from the family perspective, but also with the volunteers that came down. A lot of them they're desk bound most of the week. They don't necessarily have that connection to the ocean or the neurodivergent community. One of the guys was from Germany. He'd never been in the ocean in Australia. He literally just landed a few days before on secondment
Wow.
here with the company. Uh, and yeah, we were just able to spend time in the big ocean together with these kids that go from being hesitant and, maybe nervous about entering the ocean, to seeing that sort of transformation of them riding waves, maybe for the first time, and just being overjoyed with it, and being able to share that with that sort of a different type of community that don't necessarily have access to that or don't see that side of things. And they left just beaming. And, the feedback that they sent us would just, yeah, that they just felt like their week had truly been enriched. And it's great to be able to balance, that sustainability side of things, being able to get some funding out of that from the corporates, whilst also, providing what we do, which is our sort of core competency of taking these kids surfing. It's quite simple in concept, but then, like marrying it up to make sure that it's sustainable and that we can expand and bring more people on board to provide this to more communities and further our reach up and down the East Coast is kind of our core mission. And it's what we spend, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday doing, Lockie and I. So
Like I think you're probably sick of me telling you. I think you guys are amazing. I think what you do is
Not
amazing,
at
and
all. Lay it
on,
on thick.
yeah, honestly, we used to live in Sydney. We used to live on the northern beaches, but we live on the central coast now, and so since my children have been diagnosed, we're sort of linked in with the neurodivergent community. And yes, I've definitely been spruiking the events to the community. And I think I have also said to you guys, you need to come up and run some events on the coast. But I think, touching on a few things that you said there, again, that the core goal is to make these experiences accessible to families. And one thing that I do want to say on that actually is being a parent of neurodivergent children, taking care of their needs and managing their behaviors and their therapies, advocating for them in various spheres, it does become a full-time job. And so, I think it impacts families financially. I know that prior to me doing all of these kind of things, I was working in an office 9 to 5, and it just did not work for my family. And, not everybody has got the opportunity to do what I do. I'd already been doing photography, so I was able to create something that works for my family and I, where I can sort of step in and step out where my children's needs are more intense. And so I think making these kind of opportunities free for the community are really important. And I saw how much goes into the organization. Like you say, it might be run on a volunteer basis in terms of the people in attendance, but you had top of the line wetsuits, which are really important to keep our little people warm in the water and facilitating them to have a really positive experience. You had all of the gear was clearly well taken care of. It was very welcoming. There was plenty of shade. And I think being a parent carer, speaking from my own experience, I want to provide my children with as many experiences as possible. But it comes with a lot of anxiety, and it comes with a lot of hypervigilance, and particularly in an environment when you've got a runner, which my son is, or you have like kids who are like really sensory, which both of my children are. I'm constantly scanning, like, where are the exits, where are the dangers. So as a parent carer, to come into an environment where there are adults who understand a family's needs, and equipment which is going to be safe and enhance their experience, that's really important. So I just wanted to say that I think, obviously, from my side of the coin, it really justifies that, I guess, what you're doing, and you can see where perhaps the sponsorship is invested for the benefit of the participants. So thank you. And thank you to the people who are participating in the fundraising, and also the sponsors. And then also what you were just saying about connecting those corporate sponsors and the people in the offices who are coming down to the events. Like, how powerful is that, to be able to, again, share that joy of the ocean, and the education around what you're doing. For that guy who's over from Germany, hopefully that sparked a joy for the ocean for him, for the duration of his time here.
I think honestly for the rest of his life, like he was just overjoyed. It
Yeah.
was so cool to connect in and to connect in that way in the ocean, splashing around, playing, like engaging with kids. Like it's there's something really powerful about that, I think. And it pulls out the kids in all of us, there's a little kid in everyone, and I think, yeah, that kind of environment really gets. It was beautiful to see. I don't want to stereotype, but I think sometimes Germans can be quite formal and rigid, but I don't know, he just really came out of his shell out there, and that was something that really stuck with me. And it was all around pushing kids onto waves, like pretty magical.
Yeah, I love that. But I remember when I first arrived in Australia, and I think I told you one of the first things that I did was buy a surfboard off Gumtree. That playfulness, surfing, trying something new, that the dopamine fix that you get from persisting, there's something in that just keeps you going. And so, yeah, I can really see that when people who don't have that connection to the ocean experience that for the first time, and you're facilitating that. And I've discussed this with other guests, that flow-on effect and that transformative power, because we sort of lose that connection with the natural world. If you're working a 9 to 5, if you have a lot of responsibilities, family responsibilities, work responsibilities, it's not easy to make time for that in your day. And I think when you can understand the benefits, you're more inclined to make that time. And then when people are more connected to their environment, they're going to make more positive choices to the environment. It's just better for the community. The flow-on effects are just infinite, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with that, and I think, yeah, I think it flows on in so many ways in your life, like from the mental health side of things to,
Mm.
yeah, how you engage, how you socialize, how you structure your days, the decisions you make. And I think, for us, I think we're very fortunate, Katie, in that we both live close to the coast. Obviously, the ocean's very important for you. For me, like I don't go a day in the year where I don't go in the ocean in some way, shape, or form. Like I have to submerge myself to start my day, actually. So I get out, I'll wake up at stupid o'clock in the morning to go down before a shift or before, whatever it may be. But I can't really start until it's like a rebirth kind of thing. So, but, we're really lucky in that we live close to the coast and a lot of these families don't. But we've got that sort of magnetism now where we're drawing people out from further inland that maybe live, a handful of hours away from the coast,
Yeah, wow.
and they come down to get that access. And yeah, you see it in the families and the kids. They're thrilled, even if they're only out there for a 45-minute surf session. They then spend the rest of the day on the beach, playing in the sand. In and around our setup and our
Hmm.
tents.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, that it does provide that really sort of safe and encouraging and, yeah, sort of welcoming space for them to explore in whatever capacity, whether that's dipping their toe in the water or jumping on a board and surfing or building sandcastles, whatever that looks like. It's all kind of good stuff.
Another question I've been asking guests is what lessons has the ocean taught you that you feel that you can share with others? Because I think that applies individually and then also, as we said, sort of collectively.
So much. It's a really good one, actually. And I think every day in the water is a lesson. I think the ocean has probably humbled me more times than it hasn't. Um, and I think
Oh.
that really helps in feeling like kind of small in the world, not insignificant. I think, everyone's very significant in their own worlds and with their own people. But I think that just the ability of the ocean to make you feel really small, whether the waves are big or whether you're just far out and there's water surrounding you on all sides. And I've spoken to you about this, Katie, like open water. It's quite a scary concept. And yeah, I think just the ability to feel small goes a long way in shrinking some of the things that might feel big in your life or overwhelming or full on. It puts a lot of perspective on that, and that sort of perspective shift helps me a lot in sort of managing things or tougher times or more challenging things that might be going on in my life. Helps to quiet that and yeah, just sort of shift perspective to make it feel less big, shrink it in my brain, and then more sort of bite sized and manageable, I guess. And then the other thing is I think, and I think this goes for any sort of engagement in nature, is like lack of control. And I guess that it kind of boils down to the same thing. But you don't have much say over what happens in the water with tides, with currents, with marine life, with the waves. Once you step in there, you're kind of in that domain, and that's you have to relinquish a lot of control. And I think I'm quite happy to do that, yeah, and I'm happy for the ocean to kind of take control and you go with the flow in the water. I know a lot of people like to try and control certain things, but yeah, at that point you kind of just have to give it up and go with whatever happens, sort of come what may style. And I think that can be quite refreshing as well, because on land we try to control our schedules and the work we do and the things we eat and a lot of things. Um, and I think it's quite nice to step into that environment. And especially if I sort of tie that back to the neurodivergent community and the kids that I've worked with over the last couple of years, they are routine and rigorous with their routine in terms of the things they like to eat and the textures and the temperatures and routine and what they're going to be doing throughout the day and making sure the week's the same. And I visit them at the same time and we do the same thing every time. And it's really nice to shake that up. And I've noticed that because I will do this on the side with clients. We go out and do activities, and one of them is surfing, and I kind of see that sort of just giving up of control and realizing that you're out of control in the water in a good and safe way, obviously, whilst I'm by their side or whilst our volunteers or any of our crew are by their side. It's always safe, but it's good to kind of, yeah, give that intro into the world of not necessarily having to control or be in control of everything. And I think that has a hugely profound impact on opening up minds, even just a little bit to
Mm.
flex with the world, because the world's going to throw stuff at you that you can't account for, you can't plan for. And yeah, so that sort of flexibility and managing curveballs that the world might throw, I think the ocean helps a lot with that.
You are listening to One Breath, Conversations Below the Surface with me, Katie Jackson. If you're loving our Blue Mind content, please consider subscribing to the show and sharing it with your ocean-loving friends. So, Sam, you and I have spoken off camera just about the team in West Oz being involved in some studies related to swimming and the ocean. Can you share more about that?
Yes. Yeah, I can. And as mentioned, Katie, it's pretty early days. Their West Oz team, they pilot quite a lot of interesting things, given that's where the majority of the team are and they have sort of access to more resources. But one of the boys, Ollie, he's currently studying at Curtin University, and he has managed to get some study grants, whether it's through him or through others over there, I'm not sure. But what they've been doing is kind of twofold. They firstly have released a study on surfing and its ability to impact those with neurodiversity. And they sort of measure certain metrics on or outcomes from these surfing sessions. And these are actually tied to, this is another revenue stream that they have over in West Oz. And it's something that's accessed via the NDIS, but it's a fee for service and it's more of a one-on-one surf lesson with a certified surf coach. So it's almost like a dedicated neurodivergent surf school that is, as I mentioned, another funding stream. And it focuses more on achieving goals that are set by the participants and the individual kids, whether they be social goals or sporting goals, confidence goals, whatever that may be. And that's sort of the focus there. But they've taken these kids that they're working with and they've used them in trial and have recently published a paper, which I can send you the link to, on how beneficial the outcomes are. And it's a lot of the stuff we've already spoken about today, so I won't get into it too much, but hugely around that sort of confidence piece and how eager they are then to maintain that connection to the ocean, build that identity around being a surfer and connecting with the sort of surf community. And sort of growing as a person through that sort of channel. So that's a really interesting read, and I can shoot that your way. And then the other thing I think which is really cool that they're doing at the moment, and this is still like very small scale, like a proof of concept. They've taken over several weeks, I think 16 kids, but don't quote me on that, through swimming lessons. So there's now a swim school as an arm of Ocean Heroes, and there are studies being done around this. It's almost like a grassroots program for Ocean Heroes with surfing as their core concept, because a lot of these kids don't necessarily know how to swim, have learned how to swim and have regressed, like you mentioned Abby did, or group swimming lessons from a young age just don't work for neurodivergent kids. It's chaotic. There's a lot of splashing, a lot of noise. It's just not built for the way their brains work and function, how they absorb and practice. And so they've been doing sort of one-on-one coaching with these kids. Also, I read that drowning is the number one cause of death in neurodivergent kids in Australia. So again, sort of speaking to that safety aspect, that getting them comfortable in the water to then allow the next step, which is getting comfortable in turbulent water or where there's sand and it's hot and there's lots of people. So it's really like beautiful stepping stone that they're focusing on to get kids, at least water safe, water comfortable, to then lead into then more sort of ocean activities so that they can make the most of this beautiful ocean we have surrounding our country. And yeah, there's a small study that's come out of that. I don't think it's published yet or peer reviewed or what have you, but there's more to come, and they are sort of expanding the sample sizes. So some really cool initiatives that they're sort of spearheading out of West Oz, and hoping all that stuff sort of bleeds out east and we get to incorporate that once we've got a good base here.
Oh my gosh, I've said it before and I'll keep on saying it. I feel so emotional. I feel like I could talk to you all day, and anybody who is doing what you're doing, and what you've just said about drowning being the leading cause of death in autistic children. I'm obviously, as a parent carer, hyper aware of that. And you sort of touched on before, there are participants who don't necessarily have access to the ocean, who children struggle with sensory overload, struggle to access swim lessons, all of that. And even children that are able to swim in a pool, put them in the ocean, it's a completely different kettle of fish. On a personal level, something that I really struggled with my little guy, is not risk averse, like the opposite to that. The opposite to that. He's a risk taker. He's drawn to the water. He really is. I have read, like as you say, it's sort of quite a common thing, and he sort of he is also an absconder. So it's like literally like a parent's worst nightmare to have a child who is like Houdini near water. It is. And you can only imagine. And from a parent carer's perspective, it obviously impacts your lifestyle and access to activities. And that's tough on families, perhaps where they also have neurotypical children, where they want to go out and enjoy the beach as a family, but then they've got this really significant risk that they need to mitigate against. So I think that it's like like you said, like a match made in heaven. And particularly when you've got a body of instructors and volunteers who are so well versed in this environment, working with neurodivergent families, I just think that's incredible. And then what you were saying about the studies, like whatever details you have, I would love to share, and I would love to read myself, because I feel as a parent carer, our experience linked in with therapists and therapies to support my children and to support us as a family. I understand that the people who are supporting us would have already graduated from their studies, and those studies are done, I guess, on best practice textbooks and papers that are published perhaps some time ago. And when the therapists have got a formal education, we've got a child with autism, and so this is how we are going to support this child with autism. Not all children with autism present the same, and those strategies are not always going to support them. So often I feel like families have to rely a little bit on advice amongst the community and a little bit what's going to work for my child. And so to understand these sort of benefits are being studied. So you've actually got some like real hard data that people who are working in the industry supporting families can draw on and rely on, and then hopefully expand what our traditional ideas of therapy and support looks like is critical. I think it's really time that we explore other options for supporting our families. So I just think that would be really interesting to read. And how incredible that you're able to tie in what those guys are doing over in West Oz with studies and with some real tangible benefits that can be applied to the broader community.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing. I'd not even really thought about that perspective of, not that it's archaic thinking, but certainly I think there's more focus on neurodivergent kids, especially the autism spectrum, and so there is funding now and focus on that kind of space. And great that we're looking at learning about it and continuing to learn about it and unlock new things and new ways of working, and through that sort of data driven approach, I think is really cool. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's you've got to go sort of far and wide for different approaches and different
100%. I mean, from my lived experience, my daughter, she's got her diagnosis, her formal diagnosis, and an element of her diagnosis is something called PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance, and it doesn't form part of the DSM-5, so it doesn't form part of the official diagnostic criteria for autism. And she presents very differently. She can make eye contact. She's very social. She's very extroverted. She's very academic. But her functional capacity when she's dysregulated is very, very low. And accessing strategies that actually work for her and for us as a family has been incredibly hard, because it's not part of what the therapists study. So they don't understand it. And so, we've had, and anybody who knows me would know that I sort of go on about this a lot, but we've had people come to our family and sort of say, she needs to have play therapy, sound play therapy. Here is a visual chart to help her executive functioning so she can predict what's coming in her day. With the PDA, it is a drive for autonomy, and it's a nervous system disability. So it's not a conscious thing that she's in control of. But if I were to present her, and I have done this and therapists have done this, if you were to present her with this visual chart, which is a traditional strategy for autistic children, she would not react very well. That reaction looks like sort of oppositional defiance. And it can be really explosive because it's perceived as a loss of autonomy. And when there's a perceived loss of autonomy by somebody coming in and telling her what to do, it can send her nervous system into overdrive. So, and that's what I've learned anecdotally, sort of personally from personal observations, something like immersion in the ocean. The science behind, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, it's like a short circuit. And so there's no thinking involved. There's no strategy. Just get it, get bare feet on the sand, breathe in the sea air, get her in water. And it's like just instant. It's like a short circuit, and so to have some like real data driven study to establish that, hopefully they can then go on, and no doubt it will be a process involved in all of that. But hopefully people can run with that, because I have seen some occupational therapists drawing on nature therapy and sort of taking children out into the natural world, because again, that sort of breathing in fresh air instead of being in a sterile clinic environment, taking your shoes off and being grounded in nature, listening to birds, watching the ocean, it sort of overrides those sensory sensitivities, I think, for a lot of kids. So yeah, that I think it's absolutely critical what they're doing, and it can make some real valuable change to families like mine where traditional therapeutic strategies don't work.
Here's to more of that, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, that was intense. But
Love
yeah, I
that.
feel I'm going off on a tangent now, but that's why I feel so passionate about what I do. Like, I don't have the skills to bring what you're doing, to the wider audience, but what I can do is share our journey with our community, and say, if these sticker charts and strategies that your therapist is that's giving you is not working, get them outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's look at some alternatives, and
Yeah,
we'll continue to kind of pioneer what they look like, I guess.
yeah, I love
And
that
yeah, hopefully
pioneer.
roll that out.
That's so profound. I would really like to run listeners through what happens during these sessions, so that people can have a real understanding of how powerful it is. As a parent carer, you sort of micromanage a lot. And like you say, like, everything is scheduled and you have to think about so many different things. So just walk into a space where I can instantly relax, because I feel like, okay, I'm in an environment where I'm going to feel safe and supported, and my children are going to feel safe and supported. Maybe you could sort of like take over here, like how you run the sessions, welcoming
Yeah.
families and managing all of that.
Yeah. So I think the employees of the organization all have some sort of connection to the neurodivergent community. Lockie, for example, who heads up things here on the East Coast, he has a brother with autism. And myself, I've worked in that space for a couple of years now. And I think we kind of understand how to work with kids and their anxieties that they bring, and certain sensory things and overwhelm, and those types of things as they come up. And then, so what we try and do, our day starts a little bit earlier than the participants that come down. Obviously, we need to set everything up and get it all in order. But what that also entails is a meeting with our volunteers. Now, the volunteers are like exceptional, and we're kind of building that base of volunteers where a lot of them have been with us for many years, and continue. And it's almost like a traveling circus. Like, they'll travel far and wide to come with us to events, even up to Queensland and far northern New South Wales. And they bring that know-how from working with us. But then we're always trying to get new volunteers down and kind of build local sort of hubs of volunteers now as well, just to sort of save others from burning out a little more. But we send them a lot of resources prior to them coming down. We kind of help them understand what the day is going to look like from their perspective, how to sort of best engage with neurodivergent kids. And then we'll have sort of a briefing maybe half an hour before participants actually come down. And we sort of explain a few different ways to work with them, making sure you're taking your sunglasses off and getting down on their level, and
Yeah.
using the parents and carers, not leaning on you guys too much, because once you're down there, we like to give you that little bit of respite and that bit of relaxing. And we will chase the kids, hundreds and thousands of meters up and down the beach, and it has been done. And it's kind of all part of it, and it's something that we really enjoy and we reflect upon afterwards and laugh about. Um, in a really, really fun way. But yeah, so we encourage them to talk with parents and carers before engaging with kids, to better understand, what they might like, or things that they enjoy, or like Bo is the ninja guy, right? Like, he loves his ninjas. So like, all those little bits of information, I think, are really important to have, to be able to create that connection quite quickly with the kids, and then help them sort of help alleviate their anxieties, and overcome things to get them surfing and get them building that confidence, and sort of coming out champions, coming out ocean heroes, and getting their certificate, and feeling like that they can kind of align with that identity of being a surfer. And that's something that a lot of the kids hold a lot of pride in as well, when they come and they can tell people at school that they've surfed and that they are surfers now. I think that's really, really pretty powerful. But yeah, look, it does boil down. I've sort of sidetracked there, but it does boil
Mm.
down a lot to the volunteers, and that enablement of volunteers. And as I mentioned, we run periodic things where we'll get a bunch of them together, the really core volunteers that come to a lot of events, and upskill them. I'm actually working on sort of a volunteer journey now, and how we can do more of that sort of rewarding stuff and upskilling stuff to, yeah, empower them more to connect with kids. And for example, I'm looking at maybe some like Auslan lessons for volunteers to
Yeah.
understand even the basics of
Yeah,
Auslan
wow.
for nonverbal kids. So connecting it in that way. So we're always kind of looking for different initiatives to be able to enable that volunteer community to be able to hit the ground running as soon as they get on the sand, and like you said, sort of take a little bit of that weight off your shoulders, allow you to relax, maybe, you know, chat with some of the crew or chat with other parents and families down there. And hopefully you'll see that soon, Katie, when you come down to a proper free event, like which is a larger scale than what you've been at. There is that, again, the community side of things, but on the family, like the family side, because the kids are off playing, and the kids are off playing with one another and socializing, and which is another great hook for them. But then that frees you up to connect with others who can relate to, you know, situations and things that you might be experiencing or going through as a parent and carer of neurodivergent kids.
I feel like anybody who chooses to volunteer their time and energy and passion to help others is just amazing. So what you were saying about how you're upskilling the volunteers and welcoming families on the beach, I could really see that in my children. You were just saying about the pride in the children. I had pride in my children, you know, to see them riding their first waves. Like I was down, you know, that's one thing that surprised me since becoming a parent. I am very vocal, like at kids' sports and stuff. I'm the one like, yeah, go get them, go get them. Like it just comes out. I can't control it. But it was the same on the beach, like, you know, like, because I take them down the beach, but I can't facilitate what you facilitate because I'm just one person. And to see Bo, who's only 6, he's out there, he's got his life jacket on, he's got volunteers on the inside to catch him if he falls off, he's got someone help steadying the board. To see that confidence and all those lessons that spoke to that you have learned from the ocean, like the humbling and being part of something smaller. I feel like they experience a little bit of that because with my daughter, you know, that whole sensory thing, I think she took her wetsuit on and off about 5 or 6 times, which on a hot day is just like a nightmare. And she just could not, you know, but everyone was so patient. I was like, just get in the water and you'll be fine. But from that apprehension and fear and anxiety and everything being out of the routine to then like it's complete almost submission to that power of nature. Sort of it's physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's so powerful. And then, like you said, it might just be a 45 minutes. I think Abigail may have had probably about 20 minutes in the water by the time she'd finished the on off with the wetsuits and the carry on. But from now, that she can now take that into the future. Like you say, she can go to school and say she's a surfer, and so there are the social benefits for her. She's got that sort of social connection with her peers and the self-confidence and self-esteem to then go on and try other hard things that, you know, and then I as a carer can say, well, do you know what, that time when you were really apprehensive about going in the water and you did it and you had the best time, that's just awesome. It's just, yeah, that's what you want. I think that's what we all want.
Yeah, for sure. It gives them, yeah, exactly as you said, that sort of reference point to just check back to every now and then, or be reminded of by you or by carers. Hey, remember that amazing thing you did, and remember that sort of apprehension and tension and nervousness beforehand, and how you overcame that. Like, let's try that in this other environment or scenario or whatever they might be facing, kind of thing. And yeah, it allows you to just leap off a platform a little less anxious than maybe you would be. But yeah, with that sort of reference point. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a cool tie-in.
yeah, it's amazing. So, I would really like for you to share how people can get involved. You know, you spoke. You've obviously got the West Coast operations. You've got East Coast. If you want to tell us, like where you're operating and how people can
Yeah,
get
cool.
involved if they want to.
Nice. So we've got a pretty solid calendar for the summer season coming up, and a lot of those events are, given that we're based here and all our equipment is here, and it's just myself and Lockie, and then, you know, our volunteer community. A lot of our events are run around sort of Greater Sydney area. So Manly Beach, Bondi Beach are kind of our bread and butter. Then we go
Hmm.
down to the Shire, down to Cronulla, and Maroubra.
Hmm.
We went down to Wollongong for the first time a couple of weeks ago, you know, broadening our reach down into the Illawarra. And then we also run events up in the Northern Rivers, so up around Ballina and Lennox. And then we've moved just this year into Queensland as well. So running events in Noosa and Currumbin on the Gold Coast. And there are a few different ways that one can get involved. So either from a volunteering perspective, I think it's a great way to experience, and that was kind of where I started. So my journey with Ocean Heroes started as a volunteer. And I cannot encourage enough coming down and experiencing one of these days. And there's something for everyone. You don't need to have any surf experience at all. If you're keen to get in the water, you do so with someone who is more experienced. So there's always that sort of partnership, buddy system, mentoring kind of thing, whereby, if you're a beginner, you wear a white rash vest. If you're more experienced, you wear a gold rash vest. So easy to
Hmm.
spot, easy entry if you want to sort of enter that world. But if you want to stay on the beach and, welcome participants, get them suited and booted and ready to roll, or even just sort of engage with parents that come down and the families, then you can do that too. But there is hands down no better way to spend a Saturday. And that's usually the days we run them on. It's a Saturday, starting early morning, sort of 7:30ish till maybe just after lunch. We'll put on some food, and it is the most phenomenal way to spend a day. And you leave just grinning like a Cheshire cat, ear to ear, for honestly like weeks on end afterwards. So I'd highly recommend that as an option. Alternatively, if you work for a corporate that have some sort of budget or, I guess, avenue for doing corporate social responsibility stuff, so CSR stuff, or even team building stuff, I'd recommend reaching out, and we can try and get you involved from a business perspective and have you down as a team and sort of work with you in that fashion. And otherwise, I guess just keep in touch via our website, our socials, so Instagram, Ocean Heroes, and then also jumping on and registering on our volunteer portal. If you're a participant and you've got kids that want to come down, just via our website, it's very simple. You just go and take a look at upcoming free events, click on those. And then once you're registered, we kind of keep you in the loop with all of those that are coming up. And we'll send you, schedules, and a month out when we launch the events or we publish the events online, we'll let you know. And then it's sort of a mad scramble to find your spot because they do go like hotcakes, like
Yeah, wow.
they're in quite high demand. So it's good to be in the know. But if you just sort of register on our website, then you're kind of kept in the loop with all the cool upcoming stuff that we're doing. We do still have, well, I mean, a team, probably room for another team in the pool if anyone wanted to jump in. It's pretty last minute now. There's only 2 weeks left, or 3 weeks left actually. So preparing for a 24-hour swim and rallying 12 people together. And then sort of fundraising will be a pretty intense challenge. But if you're keen for it, then there's a section on our site to register for that too. And that's going to be a pretty fun event, I think.
And do those events, those fundraising events, like the pool event, do they run? Do you have them sort of intermittently through the year, or is this the first one that you're having?
This is the first one we're having. On the West Coast, they run them annually, so it's once a year. This big
Uh-huh.
this big one, but
Hmm.
we'll be looking to do sort of more fundraisers in between events. It's kind of a tricky balancing act because we want to run more events because that is kind of what we want to be doing, is getting more
Mm.
kids down to the beach.
Yep.
But we need the funding for that. But then also these fundraising events take a lot of our resources and effort and time as well, which could be spent planning and running events. So it is this sort of delicate balance, and we're kind of finding our feet as to what that looks like exactly. The org it's 10 years old, but it's relatively, or just shy of 10 years old, but it's relatively young on the East Coast. And there is so much potential here. And we're just kind of finding our flow and figuring out where to spend our time and where, I guess, where the juice is going to be worth the squeeze for the most part. So just one. And I guess our goal, I might just share this with you. Our goal, or our target from this swim, and this is something that Lockie and I have kind of just put our heads together, is to raise $35,000 from the swim. And that correlates almost perfectly, like perfectly divisible into 350 kids coming surfing with us for free over the next 6 months. So it's a very tangible outcome, 35,000 for 350 kids. And we reckon about 30% of those kids that'll be their first time in the water with Ocean Heroes on a surfboard. So pretty exciting. We're reaching a lot of new kids and getting them down and getting them involved. So really exciting stuff ahead.
That's so exciting. I would really, I'll share all of these details in the show notes. You have, I think you've got a YouTube channel as well, haven't you? Are you on all the social media channels?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
then you've got
we
your
are. We've got
website.
some YouTube clips. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because as I said, I cannot sing your praises more highly, and I will continue to share your good work amongst our community as well. Because yeah, I feel so passionately for families to be able to access your services, and yeah, what you do is just incredible. So, however we can all help.
Unreal. I really see you as like an extension of our team, Katie. I feel like we probably chat during the week more than Lockie and I. But no, you've done a lot of great stuff for us as well. And whilst you were championing Bo and cheering him on and frothing out for Abby, like you were also steady as anything behind the lens of your
Oh,
camera and capturing like incredible images that we've shared with the corporate and on our socials and the like that is really powerful for us as well to help get the word out and show the power of it, through a really good underwater housed lens as opposed to just an iPhone from a beach. So,
look,
um,
thank
yeah,
you for saying that. I've got to say, I did that personally because obviously, with the children, if I'm down the beach and doing these kind of activities, I can't be like managing safety and taking their photos. So, that was completely selfish, but obviously to be able to share that and to know that has benefited you, that's just fantastic. But I also have to share, I did get nailed a few times, and I have to say, when we got down to Manly Beach that day, like it wasn't big surf, but there was a little bit of a shore break and sort of in front of where you
yeah,
were positioned, and I was a little bit
yeah,
apprehensive for the children because I know how much that can hurt when you go over the falls. And then I saw you sort of take them further down the beach, and I was like, oh, that's good. But again, having all of those bodies in the water, and obviously having the skill set that you and all of the volunteers have, I felt really safe for the children, and they just had the ball. They really did. So I think the photos show the energy and the vibes on the day. I really do. And that's just sort of like transformation, and then like, the water and just how powerful it
yeah.
is. The
The
Yeah,
action shots of them breaching the
yeah.
wave and the water like exploding around them is just is so cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. But
So yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate all the work you do and all the singing our praises and spreading the word in all the communities. Like we can't get enough of that, honestly. Like the further our reach goes, the better it is for everyone involved. So yeah, it's fantastic. We really appreciate what you're doing.
oh, look, you're welcome. And I think that's a sort of good way to wrap up. Just again, how powerful the ocean is for transforming lives, like on the individual basis and then, community basis. And I'm so grateful for your time, for sharing what you do and sharing your stoke with everybody as well.
Yeah, no worries. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I think you're an honorary member of the Ocean Heroes team and look forward to working with you more and more in the future.
Sam, thank you for sharing your story, and thanks to Ocean Heroes for the work you do. If today's episode moved you, subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with an ocean-loving friend. To learn more about how to get involved with Ocean Heroes, you can find all of the links in the show notes. Next week, writer, yoga teacher, big wave surfer, and lifelong waterwoman Melanie Ezel shares how big waves, motherhood, and a stage 4 cancer diagnosis has reshaped her life, and how the ocean became both her teacher and her healer.